Barriers to Mental Health Treatment, results from the World Mental Health Survey by a number of authors, published in Psychology Medicine in 2014. The introduction. Mental disorders are widespread, inflicting considerable morbidity and impairment, and despite documented effectiveness of treatment, a high proportion of people with mental disorders do not receive care or else drop out of treatment. Untreated mental conditions have personal and social consequences and economic loss, and can increase healthcare expenditures through a variety of interrelated mechanisms. Understanding barriers to treatments constitutes an important endeavor for planning mental health services, setting priorities and allocation of resources, and reducing the burden of mental illness. So basically what the authors are saying is there's value and benefit to mental health treatment, but a lot of people either don't go or drop out once they're in. This study was performed using 25 world mental health surveys, which were carried out in 24 countries, including China, Colombia, India, Iraq, Nigeria, China, Ukraine, Brazil, Bulgaria, Lebanon, Mexico, Romania, and South Africa. Also Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Spain, Japan, New Zealand, Israel, Northern Ireland, Portugal, and the United States. The continued methodology, basically what they did was the survey was broken up into two parts. Part 1 included core diagnostic assessment. Part 2 included information about correlates and disorders of secondary interest. All respondents completed Part 1. All Part 1 respondents who met criteria for any disorder and a subsample of approximately 25% of others were administered Part 2. Part 2 sample included 63,678 respondents, including 32,387 from the high-income partition, and 15,240 from the upper middle partition, and then 16,051 from the lower middle income countries. Because questions regarding reasons for not using services and dropout were usually asked in Part 2, the present analysis are limited to this subsample. Now we're going to go down to some of the results. The results. Among respondents with serious disorders, low perceived need was most commonly reported barrier to treatment in 15 of the 25 surveys, and attitudinal behavior barriers in the other 10 surveys. I'm going to show a brief table at the end that explains some of these attitudinal behaviors. In fact, let me just do it right now. What are attitudinal behaviors? I'm going to come down here and show you what their appendix table says. Attitudinal behaviors are things like, I thought the problem would get better on its own. I didn't think treatment would work. I was concerned about what others might think. These are attitudinal behaviors. Whereas attitudinal barriers, and whereas structural barriers are things like my health insurance wouldn't cover it. I was concerned about how much money it would cost and so forth. The treatment facility was too far away from my location. Those are structural barriers compared to attitudinal behaviors as we go through this. Okay, back to the results. By far, the most common attitudinal barrier was wanting to handle the problem on their own. The next most common attitudinal barrier were related to perceived need, the belief that the problem was not severe and that it would get better on its own. Okay, those are the two primary attitudinal barriers that either prevented people from seeking treatment or resulted in them leaving treatment. Oh, I'll just fix it on my own. Or they just didn't think there was a need. Okay, so reasons for dropping out of treatment. Wanted to handle it on my own was the most common reported, followed by perceived ineffectiveness, just like I mentioned. Into the discussion. The results clearly show that low perceived need for treatment is an extremely important barrier for seeking treatment worldwide. So you need to be able to recognize, which in itself is a challenge if you have, you need some, work on your mental health. If you're unaware that you even have a problem, that can be the issue, and it's going to prevent you from going in and seeking help. It is striking that attitudinal behaviors were more important among serious than moderate or mild cases in most countries. This presumably reflects the fact that serious cases are likely to recognize need and would seek care in the absence of attitudinal barriers. A desire to handle the problem by oneself was the second most common reason reported in respondents who recognized a need. Self-stigma and label avoidance can be related to the desire to handle the problem by oneself. Even in high-income countries, public attitudes towards mental illness and fear of being discriminated in the workplace for revealing a mental illness or psychiatric treatment restrain people from disclosing their own mental health history. Continue to the very end here. Our results also suggest that there is a need for community campaigns aimed at increasing public awareness, raising mental health literacy, decreasing the distance between people's beliefs about different treatment options and what mental health professionals have to offer. So in short, pretty much across economic lines and country lines and gender lines and age lines, the primary reason why people are not seeking help is because they either think they can handle it on their own or they don't even perceive that there's a need. And in addition to that, one of the main reasons why people leave treatment once they're seeking treatment is, again, because they think they can handle it on their own, or there wasn't a perceived value in the treatment itself. If you want the long form version of this paper, I'll put a link to it up here. Thank you.